Hey, welcome to the 24K Life podcast. We are doing a special edition. We are going live on all the platforms. Now, not Instagram. I haven't figured that one out yet, although it's brand new and we'll go live next time on Instagram as well. But we have Brian Pillmore, who is a banking guru. He has all of the inside scoop about your money. Now, I don't know about you, but when I talked to Brian about doing this particular show, I told him, hey, man, I want to go live because, at the time that we talked, Citizens Bank was going under in California, and people were running scared, helter-skelter, about their money. Now, if you're going to be helter-skelter about anything, and for those of you that are too young and don't know what helter-skelter is, that is mayhem and doom. So I really wanted him to jump on. I wanted to go live just in case people had questions, so that you could ask your questions. I have my own questions, and I'm a financial expert as well, not in the banking industry, which is why on the 24K Life, we invite guest experts that are prolific in their specific area of expertise. And we want to know how we can use the information that we gather and garner to improve our personal lives, to improve our spiritual, our financial, our physical, our relationships. Brian, how are you, sir?
Outstanding. Great to be with you, Derek, and with your audience.
Great to be with you too, bro. I've only gone live once. This will be twice as it pertains to the podcast because, we like to record them, we like to edit them, sexy them up a little bit. But, money is sexy enough all by itself.
Yeah, for sure. Mattress money and bank money, right?
There you go. I love that. So, you are the founder and CEO of is it Viz Bank? VIS? Is my pronouncing that right?
Think like visual, Viz banking. Yeah.
Yeah. So Viz Bank. And, you have a great background being the CFO of a major corporation for I think the Mexican division. Is that accurate?
GE Capital. Yep. In Mexico
for GE
City.
Capital. Yep. So can't get much bigger than GE Capital. So
it was a fun time. Yeah.
So I wanted you to jump on and give us the scoop, man. I mean, I know that's like way too general of a statement, but tell us, let's just start with the state of banking. And I know you deal with a lot in this sector, but let's start with the state of banking from the consumer side.
Yeah, it's an exciting time to be a bank customer, but it's also a scary time. Mm-hmm. So the state of the union when it comes to banks is you as a customer have more options than have ever existed for financial products, services, solutions. So I think it's a great time. The amount of innovation, the amount of barriers that have come down in this digital world that we live in. You can move money faster than ever. You can borrow money. I'd say obviously we've had drastic interest rate increases, but on a historic basis, we still have lots of availability and inexpensive money when you think of things from a longer time horizon. But it's scary. Why is it scary? Well, your money today is being eroded every minute by inflation. Mm-hmm. And that's really an invisible tax that's super regress. It's a very regressive tax. And then on top of that, the banks have had a tremendous shock to their system from $5 to $6 trillion that was injected into the economy between 2019 and 2022.
Right.
And then this spike of interest rates, which drove their raw material costs, deposits have increased drastically. And then on top of that, their balance sheets, to get a little nerdy or a little geeky, they went long. They bet long to get any amount of yield using long duration bonds,
right,
long duration loans. It's a little nerdy, but it's the reality. Like that's what the situation we're in. happy to explain it in terms that are not complicated, like in very straightforward language.
Well, let's talk about the good stuff first. So you mentioned that there are, better ways, there are more ways, there's faster ways to access money, to do your banking, which we all are aware of. I saw something the other day that said something like 8 out of 10 people don't have no cash walking down the street. I know I don't. I Apple Pay damn near everything now. Even if it's not Apple, I call it Apple Pay, but
whatever it's
my
called.
American Express card, my wallet, to pay for my gasoline, to pay for my groceries. I mean, matter of fact, if I go somewhere and I can't do touchless, I get a little weird. Like, what's going on with this place?
You're much more innovative than I am. I'm kind of old school.
Yeah,
and I still carry the money clip.
Yeah,
Grandpa always had the money clip with the small bills on the outside.
Exactly.
Typically, I got the ones, but today I got a 5 on the outside.
There you go.
I must be wealthy today.
You got it. You're rolling today.
Touchless is everything, right? I mean, it's amazing. Whether it's now you got just cards that do it, you got your phones that do it with near field communication. That is amazing. I think what's challenging is there's so many options that people almost get over. Like, I'm the guy that doesn't have Venmo, so I have to call my wife and say, honey, so-and-so wants to be paid via Venmo. Send them Venmo, whatever, So
so you don't do it, but your wife does. So I'm trying to figure out what your position is.
I'm more innovative on like some bigger. I employ people overseas in Colombia and Turkey specifically. So I'm very engaged in providers like a neobank like Brex, or a money transfer system like Wise or Remitly, something like that. I'm aware of all these things, right? But in terms of, I think everybody has to decide what fits their life.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, it's just weird because I hired some consultants to do some work for me, and they were overseas and they want to be paid via Remitly and the other one that you named. And I'm like, oh, hell no, I don't know nothing about these. I don't know where my money's going. I don't know if I'm gonna get hacked on the other side.
Exactly.
So it's funny that you say that. But what I was trying to figure out when I said what your position is, it's not that you're afraid of cyber theft. You just don't use those because you focus more on the business side and you use other versions.
It's about like your habits, right? I think there's so many options. We don't have to use them all. We have to use what fits our life.
Right.
And I'm big on like designing my life.
Okay.
And my life is very busy, lots of things going on, but on the other hand, it's also very simple. Because if it's not simple, I can't do it. Like I'm a simple creature.
Okay. So, on the other side, I'm curious, who's getting these loans that you were talking about? I mean, banks their sphincter seems to be pretty tight
It is pretty tight, but it's all about it's about relationships, right? What's the first question your bank relationship manager asks when they're across the table from you?
Yeah.
Who is this person?
Right.
What's the second question they ask? What do they do? What's the third question? Are they any good at it?
Okay.
And these are relationship questions. And some people might be surprised that even on a business loan, the question that the relationship manager across the table is asking is, who is this person?
Right.
Not even, how much money they have. Who are they? Because for any loan to be successful, you need two things. You need the borrowers have to have the ability to pay you. But what's more important than their ability to pay you? Their willingness to pay you. Right?
Right.
Because I've met some borrowers that have the ability and lack the willingness.
Yeah, they don't want to pay.
So that's always a deal killer. But it's all about that relationship. So if you don't know 4 to 5 bankers, if you're a business person,
okay,
and you don't know 4 to 5 bankers, shame on you.
Yeah, personally, like you need to be able to go into their office and they know you by name.
They need to know who you are as a member of your respective community, as a business person, as a family person. That's critical.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I'm going to go with what you're saying, but I'm going to challenge you a little bit because what little bit I know, I like to operate off cash. I stopped getting loans a while ago. Not saying that's good, because obviously using other people's money is always better. And I obviously don't borrow millions of dollars either. So I mean, the most I've ever done is probably $250,000. But my understanding is that the banks were moving these decisions out further to more regional locations, which remove the relationship. Yeah, you have somebody going, yeah, I know this company, I know this guy, he's a good guy, but the numbers were really taking precedent, and that was being made regionally. Is that not accurate? And I'm
think it's part of the story. I think that's part of the story, and I think that is going on. I think there's a lot of regional banks. So there's for you and for your audience members, there's 4,700 banks that are active today in the United States. That doesn't include credit unions, doesn't include ag credit or other financial services companies that are not banks. So that's a lot of institutions. So to like the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times or whatever news source will broad brush it and say, okay, this is the trend. Well, there's really not one trend in banking.
Mm-hmm.
I like to say all politics is local, right? Well,
Right.
all banking relationships are local. So here's an example. Like I had a bad relationship in 2016, 17 with a bank that I had used for 18 years. It was the first bank that I used. I had a credit card, I had a savings account, I had a checking account. Very basic relationship, but there was a fraudulent transaction on a checking account that they didn't resolve properly. They didn't investigate it properly. They accused me of not handling things properly, and so I needed to make a change. Well, I worked for a bank. I had an account at that bank, but I wanted to explore some other banking options that were real close to home. And so I opened 5 bank accounts. I took $500 in my hand, 5 $100 bills, and I went in one afternoon. I went to 5 banks and I opened a bank account. What do you do when you open a bank account? They give you access to online banking. Right. You get to see what their services are. And so I tried them all out with just $100 in the bank account. It didn't cost me much. After I had evaluated it, I went and collected $400 from the banks that I didn't want to go with, and I went with one.
Okay.
Right. But I now know those people at those other institutions. If I need to make a change, I can make a change.
Okay. So I agree with you on the relationship component. We live in such a rush world. People never get out of the car. They're either doing it online or they're going through the drive-through, and the person inside the branch has no clue who you are. And so I think that's vital. But for a business owner, what type of bank do you think that they should be looking for? So when what the analysis that you did when you opened up those 5 accounts, what were your determining factors of this is the one I'm going to go with?
Yeah, I think looking at the business, assessing your business size. So if you have a business that is less than $10 million a year in revenue, you want to be banking with a community bank. What is a community bank? Community bank, if you want to talk about it technically, would be a bank with, call it, less than $10 billion of assets.
Okay.
So let's make it simple. Let's say if you have less than $10 million of revenue, you should be banking with a bank with less than 10 billion of assets.
Okay.
Why? Because your business needs to be similarly sized to the bank that you're working with, and they are going to feel like you're a big fish in a small pond. It's like going to a high school that has 100 kids versus going to a high school with 2,000 kids.
Right.
You want to go to the right size school so you get the right attention. And if you have a business that's, say, 10 million in revenue to, say, these are ballpark numbers, say 100 million in revenue. And I mean, these are some of the largest businesses in the country that are privately owned.
Right.
You want to be banking with a regional bank. Call it a bank that's 10 billion in assets to call it 100 billion in assets. And then on up.
Right.
Now you might say, well, I love my Bank of America or Wells Fargo or JP Morgan or whatever. I love the checking account and their branches are everywhere. It's so if you need to access capital, need to access bank debt, you want to be in similar size. If all you need is the ability to move money rapidly,
Yeah, doesn't
and
matter. Yeah.
yeah, it doesn't. Then if a national bank serves you well, you probably will find that the super regionals, those are those banks between 100 billion and 600 billion or so. There's about 10 of them. Those banks are very interesting regionally. You've got where are you based, Derek?
I'm in Ohio,
What part of Ohio?
Northwest Ohio, Toledo.
Toledo. Okay. So I was born in Cincinnati.
Okay.
Ohio banks are fascinating, right? I mean, JP Morgan's charter is located in Ohio. There's an enormous number of banks that are chartered in Ohio, really good laws for banking. But if you look at the Cleveland-based banks, the Cincinnati-based banks, the Pittsburgh-based banks with PNC, I mean, whether it's a Fifth Third or a PNC or a Huntington, these are sizable institutions. And we can do this for any area of the country, right?
Right, right.
So when we think about those, like you want to get right sized, you want to make sure that you're getting attention. If I took a little rinky-dink business, which would feel big to me, where I have $200,000 a year as a solopreneur in revenue, that's a great business, and we should all be, envious of that kind of business. But if I take that and ask for a loan from my local Wells Fargo office,
not happening.
But if I go down to my local bank, that's 3 blocks from where I sit right now, they're going to give me some real attention.
Right. So tell us about Viz Banking. Now you got me all curious because what you just said. So tell us about Viz Banking, your company.
Yeah, I launched it to build what I always wanted. So I think like some of those ideas, if you work for a big company and then you decide to go out on your own, you probably have an idea of what people at bigger companies want to buy. And so I built what I always wanted. I wanted a heads-up display where as a bank president, I could see the world around me, see my competitors, see my market, understand what kind of market share I had, understand the next best customer that I should pick up the phone and call. So we built that. And it's billions of records spanning 30 years, 5,000, 4,700 active banks, 5,000 credit unions. So, and you might say, "Oh, how did the guy that was a bank president build that kind of thing?" I went to school and studied computer engineering, and then became a finance guy, and then a sales guy, and then a banker.
Right.
So I have some tools in my toolkit that I haven't exercised for 20 years, and I decided to dust those off and hire some really smart data scientists and developers to build what I had a vision for. And then we commercialized it in 2020, and we were off to the races.
Nice. So what does that mean to, who is your average client?
Typical customers are people that have some kind of stake in a bank. They could be a leader of a bank. They could own a bank. They could be on the board of a bank. And the second set of customers are people that are selling something to the banks.
Okay.
That want some if you're selling into any industry, you want to have the best sales intelligence.
Got you. So you're going to get them all the data that they need.
Yeah, but I think for everyday Americans though, like our purpose for existing is to bring knowledge and transparency about the banking industry.
Okay.
It's a huge, you're talking top 10 industry in the United States. And every dollar that the government decides to print ends up in a bank somewhere.
Right.
So if your listeners, viewers are asking themselves, like, I've seen a few banks fail this year. I see it in the headlines. I read the local paper or the national papers. What's going to go on with these banks? Despite what some of the industry people or even the news media or the government economists will say, "Oh, everybody just calm down. It's not a big, we're not in a crisis." We are. We're in a crisis that was inflicted by government stimulus and by the decision making at individual banks. And so we're predicting between 50 and 150 bank failures in the next 12 months. What
Okay.
does that mean? Like, does that mean the FDIC is going to go in and shut down banks on a Friday and reopen them on a Monday? Not necessarily. When I say bank failures, like we see such an amount of distress amongst, call it the bottom, third of a percent. It's a very small number percentage wise, but it's 50 to 100 banks. It's a lot of banks.
It's a lot of banks.
Yeah, and there's a lot of trouble in the industry, and you can see it on banks' balance sheets. Most people, I mean, anybody can see it, but it's hard to see a lot of them.
Right.
I happen to live in that world every morning. I look at different bank balance sheets. It's really troublesome, and people should, if you have an account at a bank that's less than $250,000, you're not that concerned because you say the FDIC's insurance will cover that. It's true, but you don't want the inconvenience of having the bank shut down on a Friday, reopen on a Monday, or a merger. You want a bank that's very solid. So I
Right.
recommend people do their own homework.
Okay. And
Look at the bank.
they can come to Viz Banking and do that.
They can. We have a free tool that's on our site. That's just our bank information tool. They
Okay.
can look up the bank's balance sheet easily, see the trends, see the bank's income statement. What you're looking for is well capitalized. That's number one.
Okay.
Profitable. Number two, you want to see that their performance trends or their condition, things like return on assets, you want to see that those are decent. And you can easily look at, maybe you have a bank, an account at two different banks, compare them against each other,
Right.
see which one's better.
So how do you envelope crypto? And I consider crypto an investment. I don't consider it a currency just yet. But how do you envelope that in your mindset as we move forward, to you know condensing capital, and the dollars getting his nuts handed to it, and and
Yeah.
so how do you envelope that to look at your future, even in your own, maybe let's say from your own household's perspective, and
Yeah.
saying, hey, what are we going to do as we continue to go, and some of these banks are failing. I'm concerned about the strength of the industry. How do you think about that?
Yeah. I think the beauty of crypto is the level of transparency
Hmm.
and the finite, I should say, in a given cryptocurrency, the finite supply
Right.
that's growing, but eventually finite. Um, so I think that is a positive. When we talk about what is a currency, or a broader study of what is money, um, we can study the kind of money that we have today and what the issue is with the Federal Reserve managing money supply, and how what the level of transparency is of the money supply, and how inflation is managed through government action. I
Right.
think what's nice about decentralized currency is, one, there's a ton of transparency. Two, there's the supply is finite. Three, you don't have meddling from third parties like governments.
I mean, wait a minute. Let's stop right there. Are you serious? You don't think that the government is going to do their damnedest to try to control that, to regulate? Let's say regulate.
I
We
think
won't
they're
say
going to
control.
attempt regulation of it, but what is really, I mean, outside of them throwing us in prison, um, what is their ability? And of course, they have wonderful tax authorities, but what is the real ability in an anonymized and yet transparent, blockchain-driven
Mhm.
cryptocurrency for them to know how much currency I own or don't own?
Right. Yeah. I just think I think that's the reason why it hasn't really accelerated and taken off, is because they can't figure out how to regulate it.
Well, I think if they decide to regulate it, I mean, they already are in some ways. Um, I think that that's an effort in missing the point.
Well, they always miss the point, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, anytime the government puts their hands in something, they're typically messing it up. But when we look at cryptocurrency, what is the beauty? Well, it's not the government.
No, I love the concept. I
It's
love the
what we have to realize
blockchain.
is it does have some flaws, but those flaws are the same flaws that exist in any other fiat currency.
Right.
And yet it has some advantages that these other fiat currencies don't have.
Exactly. I agree with that.
think when I look at, I mean, money should be a temporary, for any given transaction, a temporary store of wealth.
Right.
I was talking about wealth with a client last week, and what is wealth? If you measure wealth, is it just the dollars on a piece of paper, like a number with a dollar sign in front of it? No, that's not wealth.
Right.
Right? Wealth
Mhm.
can be what I have in my brain. I can have intellectual wealth. The relationships I have in community, that's relational wealth. The good I'm doing in the world could be considered social wealth. The income that can be coming from more passive assets, that can be some kind of capital wealth or investment wealth. And on, right? I could
Right.
leverage labor markets, so I could have some kind of wealth in a labor force that's a built up and trained labor force. There's lots of forms of wealth. Money is just how we move wealth from one form to another.
No, absolutely. But
So if
I think that they're trying to,
if we think that the almighty dollar is going to be our infinite store of wealth, or even cryptocurrency for that matter, we're fooling ourselves.
yeah, but we've always been fooling ourselves. I mean, it's nothing new. That's nothing new. And I mean, I guess my disposition, and which is why we have experts like you on, so that I can even clarify my own misunderstandings. There's things like, hey, you pissed in the toilet today and your cholesterol's off, so you can't buy those cookies in the store because they're controlling everything, or at least that's the thought process.
Yeah. So what's your backup plan?
Exactly. That's why we have you on. What's the backup plan?
Well, I like to go to Colombia and I like to get into an environment where I'll say that life is a little simpler. People still grow their own food. They still pick things off of trees and eat them. They can build their own fires. They can recycle their own water. I think there's actually a lot, and then culturally, they're probably more similar to me and my family's values. That they're more connected to their community and their family. And
I'm with you, man. I just got back from the Dominican Republic Monday.
Yeah.
And we looked at some property there. We're learning the rules and the how long can you be there and what does it take. So I agree with you. And growing your own and learning how to grow your own food and all this. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist per se, but man, some of the writings on the wall is like,
I always say it's not a conspiracy if it's true.
Exactly. So tell us before you go, and I'm so glad we got a chance to talk to you, but as a consumer, I'm just going to be straight up with you, man. Most people are going to go to VizBank and they're going to look up their bank and they're not going to know what the hell they're looking at.
Yeah.
They're not. So what's your general recommendation for that person? They're out there, they're grinding. So here's the thing. I was talking about Citizens Bank out in West. There were a lot of people that had more than $250,000 in their account.
That's right. And they acted in conjunction to cause a run on the bank, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So when we look at what happened at Silicon Valley Bank, there's a big postmortem. I did a postmortem on First Republic. Anybody can read some of that stuff that I've written on LinkedIn. We try to write there as well as our own website. But I think just looking at the tools that you have available and the level of time and attention that you can give to these things, and moderate that by how much money you have in the bank as well, right? If I have a few $100s in a bank, I'm not going to be that concerned about it. But if I have my life savings sitting in a CD, I would really be concerned.
Right.
So simple things you can do, right? You can visit our website. People aren't going to necessarily know exactly what they're looking for. Go and set up a Google news alert for your bank's name. Wouldn't you want to know if other people that are monitoring?
That's a great tip.
Yeah, they're monitoring your, like Viz Banking might be monitoring your bank more than you are. Set up a news alert on Google. It's free. And you get an alert when your bank is mentioned in the news. If you start to see a bunch of negative news, you go over to the bank before anybody else does and just ask them for a cashier's check with your money and go and put it in a different, or ask them for 3 cashier's checks. Split the money into 3 places and go and put it in 3 local banks.
Yeah, I love that, man. I love that. And I think that is an amazing tip. That is a great insight. Most people probably don't even know about that. But for those of you that don't know what he's talking about exactly, I have my name on Google Alerts so that anytime an article pops up, a news article, a report, or sometimes it's a speaking engagement I might be doing, or a post, it'll send me an email saying, hey, your name was mentioned and here's where it was mentioned. At the same time, my nephew plays college football, so I have his name pop up and I see all the awards that he's getting when he gets them. I didn't realize you could do that for the bank also.
Yeah, put it for a bank or your worst enemy and put the word obituary next to it. You'll know when your worst enemy dies.
There you go. Excellent. I love it.
I won't mention if I've done that before.
Obviously, we don't need to know, but I appreciate you, man. Well, we will all be keeping an eye out. Your services are extremely valuable, especially as I see it right now, as things aren't as easy as I think they used to be, which is just part of life. But go to vizbanking.com and check Brian out. Brian has a open heart. He's a simple guy, and simple means that you can understand it if you take the time to investigate. So I appreciate your time, your energy, and your expertise today, Brian.
Thanks a lot, Derek. It's been great to be with you.
You too, man. Hang on, and we'll close out here in a second. So, hey, for all of you that have money, and that should be most of you, and if you don't, then you need to come see me so that we can help you figure out how to keep more of what you're earning. Check out Viz Banking and go to understand the simple. If you just do nothing else but then put an alert for your bank, a Google alert for your bank that comes to your email. And like he said, you're looking for the trend. If you see news and you start to see a negative trend, meaning email after email starting, or 1 out of 3 emails are negative, you might want to go to Viz Banking and really start to jump in and figure out what that means. On the other hand, if you're a company and you sell products to banks, or you work with banks, you might want to know a little bit more. And Brian has garnered some of the experts that are extremely well positioned to help you figure that out. I'm Derek Gant. I want you to be your best, bring your best, leave nothing to chance. Hey, have a great, great week.